Hey, hey, Wild West adventurers! We're out on the trail of another infamous Old West history story. Let's check out Bisbee. On December 8, 1883, three men went inside this building here at 26 Main Street, Bisbee, Arizona Territory. Two men stood outside to guard. They had heard that the $7,000 payroll from the Copper Queen mine would be delivered shortly. The five men were Dan Dowd, Red Sample, Tex Howard, Bill Delaney, and Dan Kelly. In case you're wondering, the $7,000 equates to about $180,000 in today's money. Unfortunately for all involved, the payroll was delayed that day, and all they made out with was the $1,500 in the store safe and a gold watch from one of the customers. Suddenly, from outside the store, shots erupted. First killed was store customer J.C. Tapanier, who was shot through the window by one of the lookouts. Upon hearing the first shot, Deputy Sheriff Tom Smith approached the store and was immediately gunned down. At this point, all five men began shooting. A stray bullet crossed the street and entered a boarding house, where Annie Roberts, the pregnant wife of the proprietor, was standing. She was killed instantly. Another shot hit a man named J.A. Nolly as he stood outside his office. Others were shot as they attempted to run away from the gunmen. After being notified in Tombstone of the Bisbee Massacre, Cochise County Sheriff Jerome Ward led one posse to search for the murderers and sent his deputy sheriff William Daniels to lead another posse out of Bisbee. Daniels interviewed several townspeople, including a cattle rustler turned saloon owner, John Heath. John Heath had a history of cattle rustling and robbery, but had allegedly changed his ways and had even served as a deputy sheriff of Cochise County for a short time before opening his saloon in Bisbee, which swiftly became a hangout for area outlaws. During his interview with Deputy Sheriff Daniels, Heath said he thought he recognized the men involved in the robbery and could probably lead them to their whereabouts. For several days, Heath led a posse outside of Bisbee, but when they couldn't find him, Williams accused Heath of being in on the robbery and leading them astray. Eventually, all the men were found and brought in. Many of them said that yes, John Heath did have a hand in the robbery, so Heath himself was arrested too. All six were set to stand trial, but Heath requested and was granted a separate trial apart from the other five. On February 19, 1894, the five men were found guilty and sentenced to hang for the robbery and murders. The following day, John Heath's trial began. On the stand, he admitted to being the mastermind behind the robbery, but swore adamantly that he had nothing to do with the murders and that was done solely by the five men already sentenced to death. Heath was found guilty of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit robbery and was sentenced to life in the notorious Yuma Territorial Prison. This angered the citizens of Bisbee, and a large vigilante mob, reports are anywhere from 50 to 150 men, took Heath from his jail cell in Tombstone and dragged him to the corner of 2nd and Toughnut Streets, where they threw a rope over a telegraph pole and hoisted him up. This is all that remains of that telephone pole. In response to the inquest into his death, the coroner's jury ruled in favor of the Bisbee citizens by declaring that Heath had died of emphysema of the lungs, which might have been caused by strangulation. The other men were hung, as scheduled, on March 8th. Although originally bleachers were erected and tickets were sold to witness this quintuple execution, a local businesswoman by the name of Nellie Cashman rallied against the public spectacle and convinced the sheriff to place a curfew on the town. She herself destroyed the bleachers, and when the deed was done, she even hired 2 men to guard the graves of the men for 10 days so that their bodies would not be disinterred and further ravaged. We believe that John Heath's body was actually returned to his hometown of Terrell, Texas, but he is in an unmarked grave. So this tombstone at the Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone is his final resting place, the only marked final resting place he has. As to the victims of the Bisbee Massacre, their graves have sadly been lost to history. They were originally buried here at the old Bisbee City Park Cemetery. In 1892, this cemetery was replaced by the Evergreen Cemetery, and in 1914, in the shuffle of moving the graves from here to the Evergreen Cemetery, many graves were lost, including that of J.A. Nolly and Annie Roberts. We gotta get the heck out of Bisbee! It's gonna explode! If you've liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that bell button, and hit the subscribe button to receive notifications. Thanks for watching this episode of Wild West Adventures. Onward to the next one!